Hola, bienvenidos a la clase de español del día de hoy. ¿Qué nos dice este meme? What is this meme telling us? Mucho gusto, un amigo más. Igualmente. Go ahead and let me know in your warm-up. Hoy es martes el 3 de noviembre. Para empezar, so on your notes, what you are going to do is you're going to put the correct word that goes in the blank. So for example, yo soy inteligente would be the first one. Señor Pepe would be the second one, and so on, and so on, and so on. Okay? So the first letter for your the first letter for your DOL is going to be D. D is the first letter. Okay? It's going to be actually all lower caps, but D is the first letter. Alright, so we are going to be talking about art today. It's going to be a different class than normal, as I'm not getting you to learn new terms. We're going to learn about some Spanish-speaking artists of fame. So we're going to start with Salvador Dali. He was known for his eccentric mustache, right? He was also a very, very famous painter. So he was born May 11, 1904 in Figueres, Spain. His name was Salvador Domènech Philippe Jacint Dali Domenech. He died December 5th, 1988. So, one of his most famous paintings, many of you have seen depictions of the melting clocks. Well, that is one of his trends. So, he was a painter that truly pushed surrealism in its time, and it has endured till today, but he was one of the first ones to follow it, and he was one of the most famous ones. His melting clocks are very, very telling of his work. So the persistence of memory, that's what this is called. If you look, the clocks are melting. Right, there's like this fish-looking thing, right? And then as you look in the background, you see like a deck, and you see the water, you see the mountains. So those melting clocks is him telling us how memories persist through time, right? Wow. Then we have the melting watch, and you see this watch kind of melting and breaking apart. So I'll tell you, clocks were his thing. Then we have the disintegration of the persistence of memory. So now this is showing how memories through time, they start to degrade, right? If you think back, you think you remember certain things, but then when you're like talking to your mom about or your dad about things when you were little, you find out that they were slightly different. That's because through time our memory kind of changes about the events that really happened. So you see the melted clocks, you see the trees missing gaps, right? Things that we forgot, the reflection now it's not there. That fish, and now we have another fish, and then we have like these bricks, these pillars that are from our deck. It's just all kind of coming apart. It's still there, it's just coming apart because that's what happens to our memories. Through time, they get kind of diluted. Any which way. The second letter is going to be an I. I. So that is our second letter. The letter I. Alright, so now let us move on. Sleep. So as you see this like floating head resting on these wooden beams, right? And the person is sleeping, just kind of floating. Temptation of Saint Anthony. So this is a religious depiction. So if you see, you have Saint Anthony with his cross, and you have a horse represent power. You have temptation of women. You had the temptation of fame. Kind of all of it coming together on the last one, but he is trying to stay true to himself. So the next one is B. The next letter is B. Alright? So now let's keep going. Next painting by Salvador Dali that we have here is anthropomorphic cabinet. So if you look, this is a man and you see this cabinet, right? And this is, remember, this is surrealist. So he's trying to depict something that is real in a not so real way. So it kind of shows how complex we are, how many different things we have inside, and we kind of put things into our little drawers, and some have keyholes because we don't want anyone to know. And every so often things just kind of come out. Our secrets start to just go away. Then we have this self-portrait. Now this is super interesting to me because once again you have the melting clock. You have another clock here, an hour clock. In addition to that, he's got an extra hand, right? This one holding this grater, this one hand that's being grated, the blood going into a paint bucket, and he's painting with a paint bucket. He's got a very regal look to himself as he's looking up, and his mustache is there. He's wearing white clothing. There is a shadow of a hand here that doesn't exist, right? If you look at the back, it's cloudy. Then you have some more symbolism in the back. And I think this kind of shows us that he was very sure himself, like his blood is creating this artwork, and you know, he's regal and talented. But time is a constant with Dali. He knew that we do not have eternity, but we only have so much time. In these, he's kind of telling us there's not even a way of knowing how much time we have. We're just here. So the next letter is U. U will be our next letter, right? Okay. So now we have the burning giraffe. You have this giraffe burning. You have, remember that painting, the anthropomorphic man? This is kind of the same. Look at all the drawers in this man-like looking thing. Then you have this other man-like looking thing being held together. He's got like a dagger holding in his hand. Very, very interesting. Self-construction with boiled beans. Now on this one, if you look, there's a whole person in there. Yes, I know, it's hard. You have the head, a hand, an arm, right? You have the leg, the hip. The other leg is right here, right? We have another hand right here, an arm right here. Like all the body parts are there, but it's all misconstrued. You know, it's just kind of telling us how we bunch of parts that makes up one person. The Face of War. This is personally one of my favorites from excuse me. This is one of my favorites from Dali in that it's kind of personal for me, right? I hear all the time people say or good things about war, trying to romanticize war. Lately I've heard a lot of people talk about revolution and this, that, the other, and having actually been at war, it's horrible, it's horrific, there's nothing to idolize about war or romanticize about war. When we look at his face, we see the horror in his face, right? But we see that it does not just affect him, but look how many people are affected. In his eyes and mouth, you see a skeleton, and in those skeletons' face and mouths, and it just keeps going and going and going, because the suffering of war is endless. Too many people just die, their lives destroyed. So, I love that painting for personal reasons. And then we have, the next painting we have is Metamorphosis of Narcissus. Now, I want you to pay attention to this one, because when you look at this painting you're kind of looking at two different things, right? So if you look down the middle, if you were to break it down the middle, you have Narcissus on both sides, and in one he looks just kind of drab, the other one he looks white. On the first one there's like dead plant on its head, then on this one you see a flower. The background on this is just a mountain with nothing on it, like smoke coming up on the back of this one. But on this one you have people. See how lighter the colors get? On the right side and the left side you have like this impressive bust of a person purged. It's just how the metamorphosis of a person going from their dark to their light. We all change through time. I would like to say that we all change for good, but that's not always necessarily the case, but for Narcissus it seems to be the case. And that brings us to Frida Kahlo. So Frida Kahlo was born July 6, 1907 in Coyoacán, Mexico. She died on July 13, 1954 in Coyoacán, Mexico. Her name at birth was Magdalena Carmen Frida Kahlo y Calderón. So this is a picture of Frida Kahlo, and this is a painting of Frida Kahlo. It looks like a picture, but it's a painting. So Frida Kahlo was known for her unibrow, which she refused to pluck or shave or anything. She believed that she should be accepted as she was. She believed that the beauty was in who we are and what we look like naturally, and not enhancing or plucking ourselves. So Frida Kahlo had a really bad accident when she was young. She was really sick as a child. She had a really bad accident when she was young that left her with a lot of injuries that affected her for her life. She also, her disease took a huge toll on her as a child. So a lot of her paintings, most of her paintings are about herself, and a lot of the paintings kind of show us like how she's feeling. So if you see on Without Hope, she's laying on that bed, and at her mouth is like basically coming all of her innards, and they're coming out, right? You see a fish, you see what looks like a sheep, you see a skull, you see all sorts of things just kind of hanging above her that are coming out of her. On the two Fridas, that's very interesting as well, because you see how they are connected by blood, but you also see how she is trying to clamp that vessel so it doesn't bleed out. You see how like she's like cut up different body parts, right? One's wearing white, one's wearing a more a darker, more culturally accurate for the time dress attire. So she just looks solemn on both of them. On one you can see inside her heart. Then you have roots. That's telling us how she viewed her roots. How out of her came the roots and went to the soil, and just see how they have like little roots in the plants coming into the ground. Just how she felt that we are attached to earth. So the next letter for your DOL is J. Letter J. Remember, all these are lowercase. They have Diego and I, so that right there in her forehead is Diego Rivera. She put a third eye on him. Diego Rivera was a very famous Mexican painter as well. He was also a muralist, and they were married. But Diego Rivera was a horrible husband who cheated on her. He was abusive towards her. Not the best husband. So as you can see, she's got all those tears as she thinks of Diego Rivera. Self-portraits with a necklace and hummingbird. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of beauty and there's a lot of darkness, right? So first you have her just sitting there stoic as she normally painted herself. You have a hummingbird around her neck. You have like these thorns coming out, these weeds with thorns coming out around her neck. Then you have butterflies and fireflies on the top. You have these luscious greens on the back. you have like this cat that just looks menacing and dark, and you have like this monkey over here that looks like he's pensive. All these things going on within Frida Kahlo. Now I want you to think of the movie Coco, well, we just saw recently, if you came to the classroom. And in the movie Coco, when they're showing Frida Kahlo, she's got that monkey, and you also see that cat, because they're very representative of her. It's a self-portrait with loose hair, so once again, a self-portrait of her. Not this time, her hair is down. Once again, she's looking very solemn. The Henry Ford Hospital, after her accident, she went to the Henry Ford Hospital in the United States. And in here, she kind of tells you about her injuries, right? You see her hips are outside, right? They're attached in there. There's like a flower that is dying, also attached to her. There's like machinery also attached to her. You have her internal organs and it's attached to her. And that picture of that fetus that's attached to her. That accident left her so that she would not be able to have children, which is something that was very difficult for her. And that is the meaning of that. Then we have the dream, and in the dream you see Frida Kahlo laying in her bed, right? There's like this beautiful like plants all around her. She looks so peaceful. But above her is this skeleton that is being held together by wires and sticks. Oops, I apologize, that moved on me. And sticks, right? And he's got like flowers on his chest like they put on the dead. That's how she kind of felt about things. Well, the next letter is A for your DOL. A. The broken column. So now here we go. This is something that she actually wore. It was to keep her back from moving because she had broken her back in that accident. So she had to wear that for the rest of her life. But it also shows us how she saw herself. You had the broken column all in pieces being held together. You have all these nails just kind of holding her together. The tears because she was in constant pain all throughout her life because of the injuries she suffered. And that brings us to Pablo Picasso. He was born October 25th, 1981 in Malaga, Spain. He died on April 8th, 1973 in Mougins, France. His full name, are you ready for this? This is his full name. Pablo Diego José Francisco de Paula Juan Nepomuceno María de los Remedios Ciprano de la Santísima Trinidad Ruiz y Picasso. Or for short, he's just called Pablo Picasso. It's a lot of names for one guy, right? Well, Picasso was one of the artists that started what's called Cubism. So if you look here in the Weeping Woman, you see all sorts of shapes, mostly geometric shapes, but they make a woman that you clearly see that she's crying. She's in some sort of distress, right? If you look at this one, it's the guitarist. This one is very interesting because you can kind of see the guitar. Excuse me. You can kind of see the guitar right here, right? There's a guitar, and here's the head, and here's an arm, right? So you can kind of see this person within all the shapes, but the shapes are making the person. See, here's the neck of the guitar. It's pretty interesting when you look at it because it's very easy to miss. But that is the guitarist. La Guernica. La Guernica is a depiction of Spain's civil war. It was very brutal. If you look in here, you see a broken sword, right? You see like these animals, and you see people in anguish, people looking dead. It's just a lot going on. You have the light of hope, but you see suffering throughout the painting. Even though there's nothing clearly defined, everything is just shapes. have the three musicians. This is very easy to tell. This is a very famous painting by Pablo Picasso, and it's just very interesting. Once again, nothing is fully determined. Everything is just kind of shapes. Then Diego Rivera went through a time when he was very depressed, and he painted blues, which represents sadness, and he painted old guitarist. So you see this man, his clothes are tattered, right? He looks disheveled. He's just kind of laying there, but he's playing his guitar. His hands, his fingers very thin. His face shows thinness. Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. In this one, look, he's painting these beautiful women, right? And they're all kind of dancing for this man right here. It's a pretty interesting painting if you look at it. The Girl Before a Mirror. This is one of my favorites, and it's because how we depict ourselves. So you see on the left a pretty face, right? She looks like a pretty woman, you know, a nice body. But then when she looks at the reflection on the mirror, everything looks distorted, everything looks ugly, out of place. You know, like how sometimes that's just how we look ourselves. When we look at ourselves, we don't appreciate our own beauty. Other people can come and tell you that you look beautiful, but you feel ugly inside. It's a human condition that's very interesting as to how we view ourselves. The Blue Nude, so back again from his blue period, if you see, this is a woman that is just sitting there and she just looks so sad. She's like leaning against her knee over here, her head down, possibly she's crying, and you see just how she's just sad and withdrawn, right? Probably how he felt. Figures on the beach. This is just kind of like a little fun little thing. Don't know really the meaning on that one. I'm not going to try to interpret. I'm not great at that, but it's a pretty interesting painting. So that concludes what we're going to be looking at. The last letter is the letter R. So please go ahead, do your DOL. I hope you enjoyed talking about art today. Not necessarily my forte. I'm not a big art person, but I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day. Adios.